Hi, everybody. Those of you returning, welcome back. We're really glad you're here. I'm Nancy Doherty, an analyst with National RTAP, and this is our third and final of this session of this training on the general transit feed specification. And hopefully you know by now our goal is to get you ready for NTD, and then eventually, hopefully, the next step would be to get you on a trip planner. I mean, you're so close. If you've got your NTD GTFS data ready to go, it's just a couple little steps left to get you onto a trip planner, and that's so important. So today, I'm going to very quickly introduce our speakers. There's been one change. As you all know, Marcy Jaffe, she's been the instructor for the past two sessions. She supports and guides rural, tribal, intercity transit partners with technical assistance related to the GTFS, and also National RTAP's GTFS builder. Jared, who joined us last week, is a GIS analyst with the Boyd Canton Group, and he is supporting the NTD program under contract with the FTA. Joe Eldridge was not able to make it today, but thankfully we're very grateful that Melissa Conti was able to jump in and fill his shoes, and she's a deputy director with Boyd Canton, and we're very pleased to have her here today. So we have a lot to cover today, a lot about validating GTFS data and how to enter your GTFS feed into the NTD report. There's some stuff that we thought we might be able to cover, developing the optional shapes and fare information. That's optional both for MTD and trip planning, although we like you to do it. It's good to show a route or a shape on a Google map that doesn't go through a baseball diamond or a pond or whatnot, but it is optional. And there's plenty of resources on the National RTAP resource page that can help you and walk you through that. But basically would have been repeating all that information anyways today. But we'll give you those resources, and I'll send you links as we get to those, kind of hit upon those topics very quickly towards the end of the session. But at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Marcy to get started.
Thank you, Nancy. So as Nancy was saying, we'll get as far as we can. You will be confident that you will have a valid report. That's it. That's all you need. And we will make sure that happens. If you've been able to follow along, and it has been at a little bit supersonic speed, that we're asking you to create your data, move it into the various steps. And at this point, if you're following the checklist, you've made some good progress. And ideally, you have one route or one trip or one something all the way through, and you've validated it, and you'll see what happens today with that process. This slide is just for a review. For those of you with the 2 workbook or the single workbook, you're going to be generating a feed folder. And inside that feed folder are these various files. You zip those together, and that's your GTFS. So we're working, and we will show you this process through the validation process as we look at errors and warnings and how that works. Again, a slide just for your review of where we came from. You know, when we got to step 3, all the required data was included in your Excel workbook. And now we're working to test it and make sure that it's internally consistent. And we're going to show you about the hosting so that you have a link, a web link, a URL for the data file. Validation. Jared and I are going to be working together back and forth. And so you might want to unmute. Jared, you're going to jump in shortly. And this is the splash page. You're going to go to this validator. It's on the National RTAP's support page. When you scroll down to other resources, additional resources, you would find this link. So you don't have to memorize it. You'll know what's in the slide deck. If you start typing GTFS validator, you will find it. So once that is open, what happens, Jared?
Good question, Marcy. So what does the mobility data GTFS validator do? The first thing that it does is it takes your GTFS data and it compares it to the schedule reference, which is effectively just the definition of a GTFS. It has stops, it has routes, it has text files, and it's all in one folder. If you put in an MP3, it will not accept it. If you put in any other type of data, it will not accept it. It needs GTFS. The next thing it does is it checks it against best practices, which aren't necessarily required for it to absolutely be defined as GTFS, but it means that it's a higher quality feed, and it means that there aren't immediate errors. And so it checks it against both of those degrees of severity. The first thing that you do to check it is you'll put it in as either a zip file or, as Marcy will show later, as a URL, as a web link. You can give the region, but that's optional. We wouldn't recommend that. Step 2, click validate, and it gives you a report. That report gives you a list of notices where it identified inaccuracies. So the 3 degrees of severity of notices are errors, which are the most severe of the notices. Those are critical problems that have to be addressed to be compliant with the reference standards. So that's if there's an immediate mistake, you're missing a file, or there's a field that's missing that's required, something along those lines. The next step down are called warnings. These are problems that don't conform to best practices, but don't necessarily invalidate your data. Those are not only nice to fix, but also will result in a higher quality feed that's just gonna be better overall. The third one down is info. These are items that may affect the quality of your feed or they may not. So yeah, those are the 3 degrees of severity. This is what your validation results are going to look like. You're going to get the report in just a couple seconds. It'll give you the number of notices total, and then it'll give you the breakdown. So the degrees of severity. There were, in this example that Marcy generated, there are 5 errors, 2 warnings, and 0 infos. The errors must be resolved for NTD to accept it. The warnings, we recommend, or rather RTAP would recommend that you review and resolve if appropriate. These warnings can be the travel time is too fast, the stop is too far from the shape, so the shape is right along the right of way, but the stop is off in left field. There's extra columns, or there's no service exemptions, like there's no holidays on the schedule, things of that nature.
Oh, I missed one.
No worries. So from FTA's and NTD's perspective, why do we need validation? Validation of the GTFS feed is necessary for your GTFS to be checked off as good to go. The files are there, the data makes sense, and the GTFS importantly can be mapped. So all of the like subsequent analyses and queries that we want to do with GTFS can be done. NTD analysts will extract your agency's web link from the P50 form after you submit it and validate it much the same way that you will with RTAP if you use the mobility data validator before they're accepted for NTD. So NTD's validation with mobility data validator and other open source validators is perhaps a little bit less stringent than what you're encouraged to do with RTAP. So there are 4 errors that are going to be identified by analysts that will cause your web link to be sent back. So if you get one of these errors, it'll get sent back. Here are the 4 errors you'll get. So 1 is empty file. This is if you submitted a file that is empty, then an NTD analyst is going to send an email that says, hey, there's a missing file, or an empty file rather. Can you please update this before we accept your GTFS feed? The next one is missing required column. So a required column in a required field, or rather in a required file, is not included. Relatively self-explanatory, same with missing required field. So a field in a file is not included. And then missing required file, similar things. These are just missing data that are necessary for it to be GTFS and up to the reference standards.
So Jared, I'm going to add a little bit from my years here.
Please
There's
do.
a header row in the Excel file. If you innocently go in there and start changing that name to something that it isn't the original reference, this check will come back and say, we don't know what's in that column because the header row has changed. If you get stuck, you can reach me. You can go get a new copy of the original file. But those kinds of things would trigger these errors. So just try to stay in your lane, which is below that header row for each of the tabs in the Excel workbook. And most of this won't happen in terms of wrong kinds of data in the wrong kind of column. So thank you for that, Jared.
Exactly. That's a really good point. And just to note, if you do get an email from an NTD analyst, in the script that you'll get, the last paragraph is going to be see RTAP or see X free resources. Because if you use RTAP, you're unlikely to find an error like this.
So this is one other example of how the language will come in. It's kind of technical in that if this notice is triggered, blah, blah, blah. So just read through the warnings. We're going to practice with that in today's session as well. So now I think we need you to understand how to create the web link, which means I'm going to show you from a data file to a zip file to validating it as a web link. You could decide to host the file at your agency. That is completely fine. We are offering free hosting at National RTAP, so we will show you how to do that. Come to any page related to GTFS Builder, and I always say, look under the trees, and people are starting to look under trees. But here we are at the top in this navigation for Upload GTFS Feed, and Nancy's putting that link in. But again, you don't have to memorize it or try to commit it to memory somewhere. Just know where to find it. And then when you go to that page, you'll see Upload a GTFS file. So let's have a live demonstration of generating a file. And I'm going to generate this file from my Excel. And in this particular file, I'm pretty sure we don't have any errors or warnings. We just want to see what happens. We've completed all of our data. We've copy and pasted in the stop times and trips for the file, and everything should be good to go. We go to the Notes tab, and we generate a file, and it's saying all the stops that are in this other part of the document are found before I generate. So we're again trying to catch some mistakes before they happen. And it's telling me where it's going to put that file in the folder that you already have your Excel. And then it warns you there's no undo, which is good. You're moving forward. You don't care about yesterday's news. So when we go to this feed folder in our working space of GTFS, there should be, and there are, the required and optional files, and we zip them together. So that's a process we showed you. You will watch a video at much slower speed to take it at your pace. We're just giving you a chance to reference and see how it works. So for right now, I don't need to change the name on this file because I'm in my practice session. I'm trying to see if everything's good to go. And I can drag and drop, or I can use the file upload option. I like drag and drop. It seems one less step for me to think about, but it was that number one that Jared was showing a few moments ago, upload a file. And the whole validate happens. We didn't have to touch that button. It knew we wanted to validate, and it says to us, open the report. In this report, there are no notices, errors, or warnings. Ooh, we're done. We're going to create a web link. But I want to show you one time what happens if we do see an error, how we would correct it, and then we'll make sure you see how to make the web link. So I've got another Excel file where it has some warnings in it. I mean, I don't know if anybody of you are noticing, but we wouldn't want a time zone that happens to say PTD for Pacific Daylight Time or something like that. So I'm going to generate the GTFS. It's going to go into that same folder. And when it goes into that folder, I am going to pull out of that folder the zip from a moment ago, because I don't want to zip the data that was old news already. And I take this new group, I Control A or select all, and compress that into a zip file. Agency happens to be the name. It's the direction you go up or down, whatever the last file is. Don't worry about that right now. And we go back to this validator. We close out the old report, and we find out what happens when we might have a little typo in our experience of generating the file and how we could correct it. Here's the report. Something's missing here. Moments ago on this report, you could see which agency, which phone number, whatever, and now everything just disappeared. The validator is saying we no longer have all of these conditions met, so we can no longer represent your data in agency. So this idea of a foreign key violation, it sounds a little fancier than it is, but as you start to read through it, it's saying something about the FAIR rules wasn't quite right. So we could go fix that. It's an error. It's an inconsistent data. And our time zone came up as PTD instead of what it should be. So you have to read through this row in order for you to find out what isn't quite right. So we have one more here, the URL wasn't valid. We typed it in, it kind of looked like a URL, but it's not .com, so it isn't a fully valid URL. Expired calendar. If our calendar is showing that the data for this one, and you go to the next one down, has already expired, and this is today's date, that's a warning. You've got some data in here that we're not really sure is accurate. Are you sure you want expired data to be published with your GTFS? So I'm hoping everyone can see how we would fix it. I'm not going to spend as much time as I'd like, but we would go through and make sure that this URL is valid. And I think when we correct this and put in America/Los Angeles, we will have the valid file for GTFS. Maybe we correct the future date on this end date so that it is correct. And with regard to fares, we can just take away the fare information or correct it because it was saying that it didn't like this data here. So we make a few corrections and we run it through again. And sometimes it helps me to clear the decks in my feed folder to know that there's nothing in there. The only file that's going to go in is the newest one I have. And when we generate it, it should resolve the errors and warnings that we have. Let's see how we do. In feed and compress. And drop it onto the Excel, onto the validator one more time. And if there are any other concerns that I missed, I would have to go back and resolve those. Nancy, do you think anyone in chat has been unable to follow a process that says, this is iterative. We're going to check on whether our data is internally consistent if there's a typo.
Yeah, I haven't gotten any comments in the
Okay, we're
chat
gonna
on
keep
that, just that
moving.
you do
Yep.
need a National RTAP account to upload the file. It's very quick to create that.
Okay, so we're now going to come in here at this upload process. Oh, let me take a moment to say what we need is a name for the file. So it's Jefferson Transit Agency, it's in Washington, and it's our GTFS. Now we know whose file it is. Let's upload it at National RTAP. So we were up by the trees. We chose the upload. I'm going to go one more step for you to see that for us. It's right at the top. And we choose upload and create an account. I already have one. I guess I could show you here. If you do not have an account, it will say, we don't know who you are.
Yeah.
And you cannot get in until you create the account. And it just takes a few minutes of which your agency attributes. Your name will be associated with your GTFS account. And we come in here.
Some of
And-
you might have, can I just jump in? Some of you might have an account because you use Procurement Pro. It's the same account. Yeah.
Thank you, Nancy. That is helpful because on occasion people don't know where or how that came in. Perfect. So in our GTFS builder, create and upload, we are asking that you, surprise, surprise, validate the file before you upload it. We can't require that of you, but we are asking that you consider validating. And once you're in section B, you're going to choose the file. And because I have gone to my GTFS builder and feed folder, I'm choosing the file that I have. We say open. And from there, we say save. And it reminds me that that save was successful. This is my web link. This is all that you need to meet NTD. So I think, Jared, we can go back to you at this point in the slides.
Marcy, can we just hit, I don't know, maybe you're going to do this later, but just how important it is every time you re-upload that your data file, your zip file be the same name, because that way that URL that you just created stays consistent because it builds in, the URL builds in the data file name. So you want to be consistent with the data name, the file name.
Or the flip side of that, Nancy, is exactly true. You decide you want to name it with a date, like, oh, I did this on, October 16th. Well, the next time you do it, it's not going to be October 16th. You're going to have a new web URL
Yeah, yeah.
because that date will change, and we don't need that.
Yeah.
National Transit Database, when they're pulling that file through, they want to come through whenever they do and not say, oh, did you update your link? Because you might have good valid data, but if that link changes, they won't know it because
Right.
it's going to go to something that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, we recommend that you keep that URL name the same, always.
So it's the last portion. This part will stay the same. Everything to the left of the 507, that's my account. All of this will stay the same, but this is the part that you need to rename that file the same name each time you update what's in the zip file. So Jared, help us remind, I guess I could show you how to use that web link in the validator. Excuse me, Jared, I'm going to take back the opportunity here. So we have our dashboard, we have our link, I say copy, I just hit Control C, I come over here, and I, on the second option, use upload from a link. And the reason we want to do that is your analyst and Jared and their team are doing that same process. So if you happen to copy paste that link and miss the P and zip, it's going to fail. And you don't want to frustrate anyone. You're so close. Just we're looking to review and minimize any frustrations there. So now, Jared, I think we're back to you for the next portion of the slideshow, where we're going to be looking at how you actually upload the file at Appian and Melissa. So this slide just reminds you, you could publish, and it will get published at the National Transit Map if you have your shapes file, but all of these different apps might be coming to a feed registry from your web link. So you don't have to call everyone every day saying, I have a new file, here's some new data. They will be grabbing it from these feed registries, and this is who they are. Mobility Data has one, this Transit Land has one, and the National Transit Map will be another feed registry. I guess before we close out our portion from National RTAP's perspective, you want to have someone who's responsible for GTFS, maybe two someones. If you need some help in the beginning, maybe some students are going to help you with this process to get you round one, and then it'll be easier to maintain the data. Make sure you keep track of these logins and passwords, because I'm asked to help people, but I don't have that information on your behalf. And maybe consider a system that works for you for naming the stops, the stop IDs, and all of that. And then as you update your website, make sure you update your GTFS. Okay. Da-da-da! Melissa, please take it from here. And I'm going to stop sharing.
Thanks, Marcy. Hi, everyone. I am now going to go ahead and pop into the NTD reporting system. And I'm going to walk through what you will see when you have your web link ready to go, and where you can upload that in the reporting system to make sure that we receive that web link. So there are two ways to get to the P50 form for your profile, and I'm going to go through that way first, and then I'll also show you a way to access the GTFS dashboard in Appian as well. So the first way we'll go is if you are on your home screen in the NTD reporting system, you can go ahead and select profile here. And if you are working with a state DOT, you may see multiple profiles here for your subrecipients. But if you are a small systems reporter or a tribe, you will, or even a full reporter in urban, you will just see your own profile here. But I want to just make that disclaimer. If you're a state or somebody that reports on behalf of multiple agencies, you may see multiple profiles. So you will want to select the NTD ID of the profile that you'd like to view. And then you'll see your general profile page here, and you're going to select related actions. And under related actions, you will then see your P forms or profile forms. And if you have a fixed route mode, you will see the general transit feed specification P50 form listed here. And this is where you will go ahead and click on this. And what we are able to do through the P50 form is you will be able to see existing web links. So if you have existing web links that you've uploaded in the past, or again, if you are a state DOT, you may see other links here for subrecipients that you have been able to upload. But what we're going to focus on today is how to add a web link. So you will see this top section here for adding new web links. And what you'll do is your organization, you can either search by your NTD agency name, or an easier way to go about it is your 5-digit NTD ID. So you'll want to select your NTD ID here with your appropriate NTD name. And then from here, you'll be able to select from the mode drop down the mode that you need to upload this web link for. So again, we want to focus on our fixed route modes. We don't need to upload web links for demand response. You'll select whatever fixed route modes, so bus, commuter bus, whatever modes you have on your profile. You'll select the appropriate mode for the web link you're trying to upload. And then you'll go under type of service. So this is where it will populate the applicable types of service that you have on your profile, and you'll select, whether that's directly operated or purchase transportation, depending on the combinations you may have. You'll select that there. And then for the web link, this is where you can go ahead and paste in your web link here that you will get from either the RTAP website if you're going to host there, or if you have private hosting on your own website, you'll copy in your URL here for the web link. The agency ID is an optional field. This is something if you are part of maybe a regional GTFS and you have a particular agency ID, you can enter that here, but that's not a required field. And then for the file here, this is if you, for some reason, cannot host a web link, you would upload a file here for your GTFS zip file. And I'll cover that in one moment, but I will just reiterate, a web link is the preferred GTFS submission. And that is why we recommend, using the RTAP free source to host your GTFS feed. It's an awesome resource to generate that web link to meet the requirement in NTD. So once you have that information filled out, then you can go ahead and click submit. And now, when you go to your P50 form, if you search here for your ID, you will then see the GTFS, it's down here at the bottom. You'll see the created date and the information for the web link we just uploaded. What you can do, and what I'm going to show you next, is if for any reason you ever need to edit something on your particular web link, you can do so by clicking on this ID number here on the left. And what this will do is this will take you to all of the details for the particular web link that you uploaded. And you have two options here. You can edit the web link or deactivate the web link. So we encourage you to only edit the web link if there was an error in the information in the URL, or if you selected the wrong mode by accident. We encourage you to edit it there, but if you are, if you're unsure of whether to edit the web link or to add a new web link, please, you can always contact your analyst and we can, talk you through the particular situation if there's something either wrong or incorrect about the link you have, or if for some reason you may have a new mode, we would want you to add a new web link versus editing old web links if it's a change, if it's a new service, for example. And on this,
Melissa, Could you answer if someone has a new service and it's included in their GTFS, they just need to include that web link multiple times? They don't have to create separated GTFS by mode.
Correct. Yep, that's right. So if you have one GTFS feed that has all of your bus modes, so commuter bus, and the commuter bus is a new mode, what you would do on your P50 form is add a new entry, use the same URL. So it's the same feed. You don't have to create different feeds. You can use that same link to house all of your modes. But we do require that you have entries for each particular mode on your P50 form so that we can, check off and account for all of your modes, even if they are in the same feed. That's a good question. Thank you, Marcy. And so here you can also check out the history of the web link. So you can see when it was last updated. And also, so if you have any tracking or you need to see if somebody from your agency has edited it in the past, you can go through and check out the history there. We have the deactivate web link option here. This would be if you end a service, you can deactivate the web link. That way, I don't know that we have a lot of use cases for this just yet because it is, a newer requirement. But if you do ever have any services that end, you can go in and use this deactivate web link option. I'm also going to now show you how to access what we call the GTFS dashboard. So in addition to accessing your P50 form through your profile with the process I just showed through your profile tab, selecting your ID, going to related actions, and accessing the P50. In the Appian reporting system, if you go up and click on this 9-square grid up at the top right, you'll see a couple of different options here. And one you should see when you log in is the GTFS option. And when you click into this GTFS, dashboard, as I like to call it, this is where you will see all of your web links for the modes that you've added to your P50 form. Now, if you are a state DOT, this is where this page can be really helpful so that you can see all of the GTFS links for any agency that you have access to see in the NTD. So this also applies. Sometimes I know we may have users that, work for multiple NTD reports or work on multiple NTD reports. As long as you have a user role on a particular NTD ID, you will see those GTFS links here. So sometimes for those larger agencies that may have multiple modes, or the state DOTs that manage a lot of subrecipients, this page, this dashboard, I find is easier to take a look at and kind of scroll through and, click into the links as needed. But you can also, even if you don't have that use for this dashboard, you can also come in here and create a web link through this GTFS option here on the right. So what you'll do is the same process. You'll click create web link. And this will pop up again. You'll enter in your NTD ID. And then you'll be able to select the appropriate mode and then type of service. Enter in your web link. And here I'll just cover, as I said, the web link is the preferred submission. If you are for some reason unable to host a web link, we'd like to discuss that with you. If you have a file, last year was our first year, you can do the web link or the file if you're unable to host a web link. And with RTAP's resource, being able to host a web link for free. If we do see files, it will be something we'll discuss with you during your validation for your report, just to talk through, why we can't host a web link, or we'll put you in contact with RTAP and show you this resource that you can go and create a URL It's very straightforward, and RTAP has, great walkthroughs of how to do it, as in this webinar. So it's something we will bring up during validation if we see a file here. And if you do upload a file, we have the justification here. We would like you to provide as much detail as possible to explain why you cannot meet the web link requirement for the GTFS. So I think we are, trending in the right direction with the number of web links, and folks who are aware of the RTAP hosting service, which has been a great help in this area. So, but this is something we'll look at when you submit your GTFS information through the P50, is we'll take a look at whether it's a web link or a file. So I guess I'll pause here in case there were any questions while I was presenting, or anything that I should revisit.
Melissa, just one last it's a live web link, and if somebody clicks on it innocently, they're not going to break anything. What will actually happen is it will download a GTFS file of name Fresno _ blah 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 blah. Well, that was just a test that we were practicing with.
Yes.
But this should not happen. I mean, that was a good example. When you click on that web link, it should say, I'm downloading to your computer a zip file for which it will have data in there. So, maybe we'll have a different sample for us, but the idea is we want this link to not fail. We want to save ourselves a step. There are many other hundreds and kind of thousands of little details that you are going to be successful with, and make sure you're not afraid to touch the web link once you put it in there.
Yes. Yep. If you click on it, if you click on any of them, if you're a state, this is a test environment. It's not, really what's in production. So this link is likely outdated from when it was, we were loading in the test data there. But yes, if you click on it, it's not going to do anything. It's not going to harm anything. And if you happen to enter, like I said, something incorrectly, you can always edit the web link. Or if you are unsure of how to proceed forward with fixing something on your P50, I always encourage you to email or call your analyst. We can help, especially with the navigation through the reporting system. I know that can sometimes be, it's new to all of us in terms of the GTFS requirement. So this is only our second year, working through this dashboard and the P50. So please don't be afraid to reach out to your assigned analyst, and we can, give you a call, walk you through it, and how to upload that web link successfully.
Fantastic. So at this point, if you release and I come back as the lead, thank you. We're going to just go through a few more slides with everyone. And I think this is it.
Yes, this
is a lot to read through, Melissa, but if you can summarize it, you or Jared, thank you.
Absolutely. So this was just a touch point on a question from the last session related to some outreach that the NTD validation team did a couple of weeks ago. So if anyone had requested a waiver last year for the GTFS requirement, we were looking for information and input from your agency on where you were in the process of meeting the GTFS requirement. So we had 3 different options related to where you were in your status with meeting the GTFS requirement if you got a waiver last year. And the goal of this was to get information and see where you were at. If you are in options B or C, meaning you need some technical assistance to help meet that GTFS requirement this year, we were using that to help connect you with RTAP resources and just, use that for tracking so that we can help you in any way we can from our side on NTD to meet that GTFS requirement. So this was more of getting a pulse on where the waiver group was. And so that way we can ensure that we are, in touch with you frequently to make sure that we can assist you in completing GTFS for 2024.
Can I be so bold as to say there is no forever waiver?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, we want to work with you and making sure we can get this completed. There are a lot of great, obviously, technical resources, especially through RTAP. We want to help connect you with those resources and get you on the right path to meeting the requirement. And that's correct. We won't be processing waivers for GTFS forever.
So some people have asked, I didn't hear it yet, but we're just scanning the concept of demand responsive in the NTD, and we have our experts here. But there was a word used for demand responses, which was geospatial reporting. That makes me think mapping, but here are just two samples of questions how you will represent for your demand response services. What counties do you serve? Well, that creates a boundary, and that's geospatial. You're not going to be going out there and trying to remap those jurisdictions. How many days a week do you operate? These are questions you have answers to, and it's more of a survey response than a mapping or GTFS in the terms that we were using to give you exact locations or areas of locations. It's this. So our focus right now is the scheduled service, fixed and deviated fixed, and the demand responsive you'll be able to figure out with your analyst and just read through those questions. So Nancy, we do have a few minutes, and you talked a little bit about shapes. So I want to be sure we've cleared the decks. We've done a deep dive on NTD, but I don't want to leave us with anyone in the chat saying NTD doesn't make sense, or how do I get to my form? Are
This
we
might
good
be
to
a
go?
good time if you wanted to raise your hand, if you had a question on NTD. We could take a few of them.
Most of the people on this call may or may not be the person who's actually pushing the button for their NTD report. So once this
that's
video
true.
is available, you might say you want to watch from minute, 18 to 26, and then they will have a chance to review where, how, where in the waffle,
Right.
how are they get in, and what link are they looking for, and how to validate it. Because as the reporter on the grant side for your agency, they should understand that if they click and put it into the validator, there are going to be no errors as they
Yeah,
move
and
forward.
right, before we move on to shapes, are there any questions on anything we've covered so far, whether it's how to enter your data into NTD or validating your data? I'm gonna allow, Andrea, you had a question, so if you could just briefly let us know what your question is, that would be great. You should be,
You
just
can
unmute yourself.
Yep. Try to hit that unmute again. We saw you for a moment unmute.
There you go. We're not hearing you. Maybe you could chat us the question?
You want to try again? Hola.
Maybe there's a problem with the speaker. Send the chat to us and we'll do our best to answer your question.
We'll make sure we address it. Thank you.
See,
So
anyone else has a hand up? No. All right, so
fantastic.
moving on.
Thank you for that deep dive. We now shouldn't have frustrations when we're successful with our GTFS. We have a file, we're ready to go, and we want to add shapes. The idea of shapes is that it will now match the route to the road. And when you might go this way, and that's one bus stop to the next or a train station to the next, you don't want to display over a pond, the ball field, somebody's grandma's backyard. And so the shape line helps you to create that imagery and looping through the data set. And we do that in my maps. And we take the stops that we have and draw those by saying stop 1, stop 2, stop 3. And we take that KML line and we bring it back into the Excel file. So we have videos and guidance in our guidebook on how to do this. I don't think I can do it in 2 to 5 minutes, but if we do have a few more minutes, I will bring this in because we have a few more topics to cover. And these are the steps. Again, it seems impossible, but if you just start watching the video, it may be about 10, 12 minutes, start looking at your file, start mapping it out, you'll say, oh, the line is drawing where I want it, or I'm going to pick up the line and move it to where I want it to go. And then you just drop it into the Excel file. to me, it's the fun part of the process. And what's more important, and what Jared was mentioning and Melissa as well, if we want valid data, this catches if a bus stop's out of order, because you're drawing a line, it's going along a particular route. But if the bus stop got put into the schedules workbook innocently out of order, the shape line goes back at you saying, I can't get there without going to that stop ahead. So that's what this process allows. And it will help when we're mapping a national transit map to have your routes on the road, and we get that from shapes.
Marcy, can I just say, every trip group could possibly have their own shape ID, or the same shape ID could be used if the shape is the same, but maybe the day of the week's are different, it would be the same shape ID. You would use it, so
Absolutely.
you don't have to create many of them.
Correct. Or you might have a master one, and then you're going to just remove a little section where you don't go to the senior center midday. That'll be a
Yeah.
straight line rather than a wiggle into the senior center.
And resave it as a different name or ID, yeah.
A new shape ID that would assign that shape to the variation for that trip group. So yes, each trip group will have its shape ID that you reuse for all the stops in a trip group. Excellent question.
Can we just, can I jump in real quick about, Andrea was able to put her question in the chat, which is great. But going from AVEC, are you familiar with that software? Her stops are in software called AVEC.
Well, Jared and I might be at a loss here because we haven't seen it. but-
ArcGIS, sorry, ArcGIS.
Ah, okay. Now we're talking. You should be able, and Jared, maybe you're more expert here. Please, unmute. There should be a way for you to export in decimal degrees, right? Jared, you jump on in here.
Yeah, you can do it in pretty much the same way as you would with Google Earth. You export the KML, and you're more familiar, but apparently you just take the KML and drop it into the Excel. Is that
I
correct?
think she just wants her stops, the lat long for the stops. So it's
Oh,
the
okay.
stops layer, stops, what do you call it in ArcGIS?
Yeah, exactly. It'd be the stops layer, and you just export it as a table, and then from there export the table as an Excel.
And now make sure that your columns are going to go into the right columns, that we name them stop ID, and that might be the identifier you used in ArcGIS. That's fine. It's an internal code. And then a stop name. Check it over. Maybe you had a quick name when you were building your ArcGIS. What's the rider going to see? Does it match your website? And then the lat and long, just make sure the header matches up so we don't have it flipped and you're in another part of the world. Fantastic. So thank you for that question. Yes, the whole purpose of GTFS is to bring together data that you already have and put it into the Excel file so it's in a digitized, standardized way. Do not start over. You might consider taking that file that you have from ArcGIS and bringing it into My Maps and just looking at it one more time. The other day when we were working with some team in Puerto Rico, someone missed a digit and that bus stop ended up in Venezuela. And you wouldn't see that in your data set because there's so many points and dots and lines and everything. But visually on the map, it takes one step away and you go, oh, I was missing a digit, and it went back to the island. So excellent question. Thank you for that. And Nancy, any others related to how we might be able to repurpose data that individuals might have?
There's a question, it's related to, I think, NTD. Are any systems exempt from the GIS requirement? And I'll let Melissa or Jared take that.
Sure, I can take that. So the answer there is no. If you are reporting as a urban reporter or a rural reporter and you have a fixed route, you are subject to the GTFS requirement. The agencies that wouldn't be subject to that are those who do not operate fixed route modes and are reduced asset reporters, which are a specific type of reporter that only report a very small amount of data to the NTD. But if you have questions about what reporter type you are, Francisco, please feel free to contact your NTD analyst. We can help.
What about deviated fixed routes?
Sure. Deviated fixed routes are considered to be fixed route services. So both deviated fixed routes and services that have point deviation as well. So those are all reported in the NTD typically as MB or a bus mode. So those are subject to the GTFS requirement as well.
Now, I'm going to interpret a little bit more. What I heard was GIS requirement, which would be related perhaps to drawing it on the map more precisely. And at this time, NTD is not requiring that you draw the route on the road and create a shape ID. It will help you. It will be much easier for trip planning. But to meet your NTD in the next couple of days or weeks to report right away, you might put shapes on hold and then come back and add the shapes line. So again, if your question didn't get answered by both of us, and I don't think I'm misrepresenting NTD there, the GIS layer of shapes could take some more time. We don't need that immediately for the first level of NTD reporting. Melissa, can you give a nod to that?
Yes, that's right.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you so much. And Nancy, did that bring up any other questions for our?
No, just Fran just did clarify, he was interested in the GTFS requirement, not so much the shapes requirement, which we've
Perfect.
established as an optional element for NTD reporting.
Speaking of optional, we're going to just mention you might have a way, or there is a way for you to represent with not too many data points that the rider is going to pay a certain amount of money. This is our section 13, and 13.2 relates to two tabs. One is called fare attributes and the other is fare rules. And if your entire system is fare free, you have about 6 things to enter. And when the rider goes to plan a trip, they're going to see that they don't need to pay. Now, this would not be, I'm a veteran or I carry a special card or something else. This is for everyone. The one-way adult fare comes in as fares in these 2 tabs. So optional, very helpful, not required. But again, if it takes 10 extra, a minute and a half for you to enter it, it could save that rider some frustration trying to stand there with their pocket figuring out what it costs.
Marcy, maybe I misunderstood you, but you said if it's free, you have 6 options to enter or 6 data points to enter into fares. Is that right?
The word free, 0, USD, method of payment on
Gotcha.
board, JTA, and then the word free.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
The video on fares would explain it in more detail and give you some more examples. And there is a complex version of Fares V2 if you do want to show veterans versus something else. But right now, not everybody at Google gets a chance to see that. So we're not encouraging you to spend a lot of time on all these different fare rules and types when they're not going to be as available to the rider. So this next piece, because we are excited about GTFS Flex, and what Flex would say is, I live somewhere near a fixed route, and how would I know who to call in order to get to that bus stop to get where I'm going? So we're just giving one highlight of Vermont, and they have created their own trip planner. It's not Google, it's not Apple, it's not Bing. It's their own trip planner at their website. If you want to explore it, it's right here. And you and the riders would be able to find out that you call 48 hours ahead. If you're this, if you're that, you would be able to see what all of your qualifications have to be, because that isn't open to the public. To take this connector, you have to qualify. So that's what GTFS Flex will offer once it's published and available elsewhere. At this moment, it will be in regions around the country that are paying to have their unique trip planner, or in some cases, Transit app is publishing that data, but we don't know if that's for free. And so we would need you to discuss that with Transit app if you want to go as far as to produce a GTFS Flex data set. In the interim, because Marcy's always about, how about today, not next week or next month? So in Greensboro, North Carolina, they've been using GTFS Builder for quite a while. And what they were able to do is just do what we were doing, create stops, create times, maybe put some stars in there. They didn't know what time. And the rider gets to see a trip plan that says, call the agency. And in every bus stop, if you touch on any of these bus stops, it says what phone number to call and how soon. So we're giving the rider the same information. It's now on Google Maps, not these separate trip planners. And the rider calls. It doesn't take whatever time or it doesn't take that route. They don't care. They're going to get where they're going. And they now are aware that a flexible service is available to them. In Washington State, from the website, it says, during these hours, on these days, you do this. And we've operationalized that and said, here, it's on Google Maps. You don't have to read about it. And the passenger must call the agency during those hours, and that they have a chance to be successful with getting where they need to go without having to wait for the fixed bus that might only go 2 or 3 times a day while they're running this dial-a-ride. That's a general purpose dial-a-ride. NTD does not require you to do this. This is making some additional value of your GTFS today with what's available, which is a fixed route system. And so you're going to need to create a stand-in route. If you want to go down this path, it has to conform to the box that's GTFS. So anyone can ride, choose some popular places where that route stops, and you add these non-time points. It doesn't have to be very extensive, and you publish this timetable as your route, and then it can be available to riders. Again, we'll talk you through that. We're trying to get through NTD. We just want you to know there's an option and that we don't really like that riders have to guess or know that there's a flexible service available when it may take us a little while longer for Google and Apple to publish the GTFS Flex. So, success. We're ready for you to move forward. Nancy, do you want to talk about some other events that National RTAP is having in the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, there's basically 4 events, as you can see on the screen here, that are coming up. On mobility wallets, we have a brand new marketing toolkit that we'll be introducing on November 12th. We're very excited about that. I think people have been looking for that for a long time. You've got to get the information out there. Succession planning, which is a LinkedIn learn-in. Of course, that's a very important topic. As people move on, you need a succession plan on how to do that. And then finally, we have our book club. National RTAP hosts a book club every quarter or so. So our next one is in February, and we're speaking about a book called The Lost Ticket. So last time we talked to one of the original freedom riders from 1961. The buses are coming, and it was an amazing discussion, and the author joined us. It was very cool. And then finally, we do have our technical assistance national conference coming up in Austin, Texas, in December 2025. So that's over a year from now, but mark your calendars, it'll be awesome. And of course, Marcy will be there. And hopefully some of our
Keeping
friends here from
GTFS up to
FTA.
date.
Is there another slide or? Yeah.
Just
Okay.
how to reach out.
So we do have a couple minutes. If anyone does want to raise their hand, if they have a quick question, we're happy to, help you if we can.
And let's remember that we have our Thursday office hours at 1
Yes.
o'clock, as long as it's not Thanksgiving, Christmas Eve. If all of you are home, I should be home too. But each week we are offering a flexible, and Nancy can put it in the chat, but it's much easier actually if you come and learn how to go to our National RTAP page, and on our support page or any page related to GTFS Builder, click on this link. Don't try to remember and keep the link in some other place.
Yeah, the
Just
link only
visit
works
us.
on Thursdays, or Marcy's only going to be there. You might be in a meeting by yourself if you can show up on a Tuesday, but she's there Eastern Standard Time at 1 p.m. on Thursday afternoons, with the exception of major federal holidays, of course.
And I'll close that about 1:30. So yes, you can try to squeak in at 1:29, but I'm not going to stay 3 or 4 hours waiting, hoping maybe you might show up. So try to arrive somewhere closer to 1. And you can schedule individual learning with me, but ideally and often we're finding sharing together in these Thursday sessions, gets us a little more excited. We don't feel as afraid that we're the only one who didn't understand that one piece of the puzzle. So please join us. That's why we're here. And we know you can be successful. This is an opportunity. But actually, what I've really noticed is people start looking at their data differently when they're using GTFS. That Hollywood video that stayed on the website for the last 5 years is probably not in business. That writer's trying to look around for that Hollywood video store in front of a particular intersection, it's not there anymore. So you might decide to update your website as you go through and update your GTFS or create your GTFS. And that has been a thrill for me because it's easy to go day to week to year and not make these minor little tune-ups, but writers will really appreciate that you have current data to your current operations. And then when you certify it with your NTD report, everyone will know that these little hiccups were resolved.
Marcy, it's 3 o'clock, so can you just show the last slide, which is just some contact information for National RTAP?
Absolutely,
There you
thank you.
go. But and while you're showing that, I just want to thank Melissa and you, Marcy, of course, and Jared for joining us today. You presented a lot of great information. I hope it's helpful. Again, we have the videos for working with GTFS Builder on our support page. There's 11 of them, and they really do follow the training that we've just done over the past 3 weeks, which is always lovely when you're on a video because you can pause it and do what you need to do, and then start it up again. So we find that really a really great way of learning and putting your data into GTFS Builder. Finally, again, if you could take the survey that'll pop up as soon as you leave the webinar, that's really helpful to us because it does inform our trainings the next time we do this and other webinars as well. And I think we do ask a question about the conference if there's something that you might be interested in seeing at the conference. So on that note, I wish you all a wonderful good afternoon. Thank you very much for attending.